So, a week and a day ago, I was in the Pinelands with, with Christine Hopkins and her family, and with Bobby Miles and June Hammond and Marty Levin and several other friends of Christine's. And I am not here today to pay tribute to Christine because it's not why we're here, but I am here to talk to you about how she inspired me because you heard in her words that she really knew the truth of her being. She understood her divinity. And the interesting thing about it is if you knew her, she presented herself as this very energetic, lively, vibrant, feisty, curious, kind of fearless individual, right? And deep within her soul, she knew who she was. And that's what I want to talk about today because we all know that about ourselves, don't we? We really do. That's why we're here today, just to be reminded of that, to see that within ourselves, the divinity, right? To see it in each other and to share it with each other, right? That's the community part of it. And Christine loved community. She loved this community. She loved people, animals, nature. She was just a lover of life. And, I want to celebrate that today because we want to celebrate our lives, don't we? Really. And what is our life? What is life? Really. When I was there last Saturday in the Pinelands, and I was saying prayers and saying a few words about what I know about Christine, what was coming up for me, and it's been with me all week, what was coming up for me was this question: what is life? And I love that. I love questions. Questions really bring us, if we really sink ourselves into a question, we can really come to spiritual truth. So that was the question that was coming up for me. What is life? And there could be many answers to that question. And I don't really have a verbal answer to it because I think it's everything, really. So I can't really define it. But I do know that the essential essence of me and of you and of all things and all beings is that divinity within that Christine expressed so eloquently in her reading, right? And so I want to talk about that today because she inspired me to remember that. And it's not that I don't remember it at times, but the last few months of her life, she really she focused on connecting with the God within. And I know that because she told me. And she shared many readings with me over the course of the last year because she was in our practitioner training class and we had assignments. So those readings I pulled out of them and created that reading today. And I was really amazed when I read them over again at how inspired she was. So as I say that about her, I also say that about myself and about each one of you because I know you are. Why are you here, right? Why are we all here together? We know that about ourselves. We know that our life is eternal, right? What is life? It's that eternal part of ourselves. But we walk through our world, our everyday experiences, and oftentimes we forget that, don't we? How can we walk through our life and remember that and still participate fully in life? And that's something I think about a lot because especially all of the spiritual studying and all of the practices that I've done over the years and continue to do, and every day is different for me. I do different practices. But then I engage in the world. I've got this new job here as the incoming senior minister. I've got things in my personal life going on, as do each of you, right? How do I stay in that place of presence? Ginger sang about presence in her opening song, right? That's the divinity within. How do I stay there and still interact as a human being in the world, holding that presence and extending it forth to whomever I interact with? That's what I see as the challenge in life, and it's always been my challenge. And it's getting easier and easier. I find that as I move forth in my human life, as I continue to do my spiritual practices, I remember more and more, and it's easier and easier in the face of situational experiences, I'll call them. It might be, say, a feeling of discomfort that I might be in, or it might be an actual conflict with another person, or something shows up that just turns my life upside down. I mean, we all know that can happen, right? We've all had those experiences. How do I remain present? How do I stay in that place of neutrality and peace and harmony and still take care of whatever needs to be taken care of, right? Because I used to be a person that was very reactive. Something would happen or someone would say something to me and boom, I would just react, right? It would just, I grew up in a large family, 7 children. There was a lot of sibling interactions going on, and we all just were ourselves, right, all of the time. So there was this back and forth, da-da-da-da-da, and I grew up with that, and I carried it into my adult life. And especially over the last 10 years, I've been really focusing on how can I walk through the world in peace. That was Jesus Christ's challenge, right? And he came to the place where he knew how to do that, and he taught that, right? There are many, many mystics that know that. There are some that they have come to that awareness just through enlightenment, just instantaneously. I can think of Byron Katie as an example, if any of you know her, or Ramana Maharshi. He was an Indian mystic, and he was an ordinary boy, and at 16 years old, something just shifted, like a lightning bolt came over him, and he just shifted into awareness. He left his home, he left all of his belongings, and he moved to a place called Arunachala, a cave, well, a mountain, really, a sacred mountain in India, and he lived the rest of his life there. And he died in 1950. He was born in the late 1800s. He devoted his life to just being in that presence, right? Then there's you and I. I have not been hit by any lightning bolts. So what happens for me is it's an incremental learning. My life is my teacher, and it's a daily experience. And some days are easier than others, right? Because I'm interacting with people all of the time. I'm interacting with life all of the time, with circumstances, with the energies of the universe. Sometimes it feels like my life is in chaos. And how do I manage that? Well, the truth is I don't. I've come to the realization that I can't manage what I can't manage. I can't control what I can't control. But I can go along with it, and I can accept it as it is. Allow things to be as they are. Another spiritual teacher, Adyashanti, teaches that. Allow things to just be as they are. How many of us can do that as we walk through our world when someone says something sharp to us and we feel deeply hurt inside? Can we really hold our tongue and just be with it? Maybe not be peaceful in the moment, but be with it, right? And then we can go home and we can process it, right? So in the moment that we're feeling the discomfort, the hurt, which is suffering, right? It is a suffering. In the moment that we're feeling that, We can have our outer being, our physical personality, be in equanimity, and we can go home later and we can process those emotions. Because what is keeping us from really knowing the truth of who we are, that divinity within that Christine spoke so eloquently about? It's all of these energetic blocks, these feelings, these thoughts, these emotions. If someone says something to me and I'm feeling like, oh, they hurt my feelings, like a deep hurt, maybe it came from something that my parents said to me or that I said to myself, that I'm not worthy, or it could be many different things, right? We all have these thoughts and these feelings at different times in our lives. How can we be at peace? Well, the way to be at peace, really, what I found in my experience, is I need to recognize and be with those feelings and those thoughts. So let's say someone says something to me and I'm feeling deeply unworthy, like I don't deserve this, right? Or this was unfair, whatever was said to me or done to me. I can be with that. I can go home. I can journal about it. I can bring my awareness deep into my body and feel those emotions and allow them to move forth. If I don't do that, they stay with me. And what happens? Well, next week somebody else will say something to me. And I've got the same reaction over and over and over again. I've lived my life like that up until fairly recently, maybe the last 10 years. But when we talk about really knowing the divinity within ourselves, knowing that presence, how do we come to that? We can chant, we can sing, we can pray, we can do all sorts of things. But if we're in a place of turmoil inside, emotional turmoil, mental turmoil, from our thoughts of anger, of resentment, of feeling unworthy, of low self-esteem, of feeling angry, you know, the myriad of emotions, right? If we're in those places, it's much more difficult to walk through the world and to feel the presence within, right? And to know the truth of our being. So what's the answer? Keep doing our spiritual practices, keep knowing our truth, right? And when situations come up, when people show up in our lives, and I've started to look at people who push my buttons as my teachers. It's not always easy in the moment, right? But they really are our teachers. You know, the Dalai Lama, you know what he calls the Chinese? He calls them my special friends. He does. Yeah, my special friends. You know, he doesn't walk through the world in anger and in hatred, even though his land, his country, has been decimated by this political war situation, right, which we all know about, right? He doesn't hold on to feelings of anger. He lives in peace. I saw a documentary once about him and Desmond Tutu, and somebody that works very closely with the Dalai Lama said that, you know, he's a very public person. We see him a lot. Right? He travels all over the world and he interacts with so many people. But he spends 80% of his time in meditation. 80% of his time. Right? So he's always working his process. And I consider him an enlightened being and certainly a world leader. We can do the same thing. Right? We can be in that presence of the divine within ourselves, because that is the truth of our being. And we know that. Each one of us in this room knows that, and I know you know that, right? Because I know almost every one of you, right? We can be that more and more in our daily lives, right? Just by being aware. Just by paying attention to what's going on inside of us. And I personally don't have the luxury of spending 80% of my time in meditation. I would love to do that. I think it would be really nice to live in a cave and be able to do that. Well, maybe not live in a cave, but but to be able to, you know, engage in my spiritual practices and live in presence effortlessly, without any distractions, without any upsets, without any discomforts. But that's not the life I was given. I was given a life of interacting in this world and having challenges, right? Financial challenges, living challenges, family challenges, just like all of us, right? We're living in this world. Traffic challenges, whatever it is. Um, Discomforts in our job, whatever it is. So that's our challenge. And there's another mystic, he's really an Indian saint called Nisargadatta Maharaj. And he lived his life more or less the way you and I do, right? Because he became an enlightened being. He wrote a book called I Am That, or somebody wrote it about his teachings, I'm not sure, but it's called I Am That. And he ran a tobacco shop, and he had a family. So he lived a family life. And he lived he had a commercial business, a small one in the community. And at a certain point in his adult life, he studied with a teacher, a mystic, and he became enlightened. Within a year, I believe, a very short period of time, but he dedicated himself to really knowing the truth of his being. And then he started teaching in his tobacco shop, and he did that for the rest of his life, which was many, many, many years. So he's more like us because he was in the world. He wasn't like Ramana Maharshi in a cave somewhere, and people came to him once they discovered his presence, capital P presence. But we can emulate that. Jesus Christ did that too, right? He walked through the world, and he knew the truth of his being, and he knew the truth even of his so-called enemies, right? Even in the last hours of his life, he forgave, right? He knew that life is eternal. So for us, what's the message going forth, right? Do our spiritual practices, keep living life, because there's presence just in the joy of our everyday experiences with our children, our grandchildren, our friends, just like Christine did. You know, she loved drumming, she loved dance. You all have things in your life and the people in your life that you love, right? Enjoy that and immerse yourself in it fully. Pay attention to your inner feelings, to your thoughts. If something feels uncomfortable, pay attention to it and process it. What's going on here? Just ask a question. What is going on here? Why am I feeling this way? And just leave it as an open question. You can journal about it, you can pray about it, can meditate on it, can contemplate. There are many different ways to process our feelings and our thoughts. And we can allow them to be and allow them to move forth out of our being. And, you know, all of these discomforts, they're like layers. They keep showing up again, but the more we process, the less, I'm going to say charged they become for us, until we learn to be at a point where I am now, where I don't get upset as much as I used to. You know, people yell at me or do whatever, and it doesn't bother me anymore. Hardly ever. I have to say hardly ever, because once in a while it's there, right? But I know how to process it. And something's coming up. It's there for me to address and process so I can go back to remembering the truth of who I am. So I'm going to leave you with that, and thank you very much.